Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of those who are joining us today virtually and in person at the Department of Energy headquarters here in Washington, D.C. My name is Ann Augustin, and I'm the Principal Deputy Director, Office of Economic Impact and Diversity here at the Department of Energy. We are so honored to be part of the American Association of Blacks in Energy's National Conference and to officially launch our Equity and Energy Initiative today. As you all know, AABE is a visionary and profoundly effective organization that is leading the way on bringing forth diverse talent to the energy industry. We are so proud to partner with AABE and its amazing president and CEO, Paula Glover. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce the Director of the Department of Energy's Office of Economic Impact and Diversity, the Honorable James E. Campos. Director Campos was nominated by President Trump and confirmed by the United States Senate on April 9, 2018, to serve as the Director, Office of Minority Economic Impact. In that position, Mr. Campos is statutorily charged with ensuring that minorities and underserved communities are afforded equal opportunity to participate fully in the Department of Energy's programs. In addition to his Senate-confirmed position, Mr. Campos serves the agency in several other capacities, including as Director, Office of Economic Impact and Diversity, as Director, Equal Employment Opportunity for the entire enterprise, and as the Chief Diversity Officer for the agency. In his various roles, Mr. Campos is tasked with implementing legislation and executive orders with an eye toward their effect on minorities and the minority businesses. He is also charged with enforcing the anti-discrimination statutes for DOE's internal and external stakeholders and fostering an inclusive work environment where diversity of thought, race, gender, and other attributes are valued and leveraged to achieve the Department of Energy's mission. Mr. Campos serves as the agency's designee on several White House interagency initiatives, including, but not limited to, the Initiative to Promote Excellence and Innovation at Historically Black Colleges and Universities, the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council, and the White House Council on Eliminating Barriers to Affordable Housing Development. Prior to his presidential appointment, Mr. Campos was the senior advisor to the president of Nevada State College, focusing on economic development, strategic planning, and government affairs. Over his career, Mr. Campos has held several Nevada gubernatorial appointments, including the Equal Rights Commission, the Workforce Investment Sector Councils on Gaming, Tourism, Entertainment, and Mining and Minerals, the Office of Economic Development International Trade Council, and the Nevada Taxi Cab Authority Commission. Additionally, he was the commissioner of the Nevada Consumer Affairs Division, where he regulated 7 industries and enforced the state laws governing deceptive trade practices. Lastly, Mr. Campos has been a small business owner and an adjunct professor in his past life. Mr. Campos holds a Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Science degrees from the University of Maryland and a Masters of Business Administration from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Please join me in welcoming Director Campos to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. That was very nice of you. I appreciate the introduction and for the very many kind words you shared. And thanks to the American Association of Blacks in Energy for our continued partnership. Thank you to everyone that has joined us here at the Department of Energy's headquarters and for all of you joining us today virtually. I would like to start by thanking Energy Secretary Dan Brouillette for his incredible leadership at the department as we continue to play an important role in the conversations surrounding our economy and our great nation. I know that equity in energy is an initiative he deeply is passionate about, and we are all committed to executing the goals of this vision throughout the entire enterprise. It is truly an honor for me to have the opportunity to host today's event in partnership with AABE and the many organizations and agencies that represent all of us. During the next 2.5 hours, we will hear from Secretary Brouillette, host a fireside chat with the National Director of the Minority Business Development Agency, MBDA, and my good friend David Byrd about a new MOU that we signed on July 29th. Now, this MOU will strengthen collaboration between our agencies and adds new resources that will benefit the growth of U.S. minority enterprises, a mission that we both share deeply. We will also convene 2 panels with DOE leadership on leading the way to our energy's future. 6 different DOE program officers are here today with us, and they will be and joined by Chris Metzler, President of People and Innovation, who will moderate the separate panel discussions. Truly, these are challenging times for American energy and innovation, but thanks to this administration, all of the above approach to energy strategy, we will come out of this pandemic stronger and more energy dominant than ever. The Department of Energy is coordinating closely with the White House and agency partners and our 17 national labs in a whole-of-government unified response to the pandemic. As Secretary Brouillette often says, the American post-pandemic comeback will be powered by American energy, and our DOE is truly leading that way. Now, I'd like to discuss with you today a few of the many initiatives the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity are undertaking. My Office of Economic Impact and Diversity exists to serve the diverse communities of this great nation with opportunities for growth and economic advancement because this nation's economic strength in the future relies on supporting the diverse talent of the day, which is why I am pleased to present to you the Equity and Energy Initiative, which we call EIE. Equity in energy focuses on the importance of increasing interest and access to the energy economy for individuals in underserved communities. Interest and access is pivotal to the entire initiative because without the interest and without the access, we cannot deliver on the 5 pillars I'll discuss in a few moments. Now, we aim to accomplish these goals through its 5 core pillars. 1, workforce development. 2, STEM enhancement. 3, supplier diversity. 4, technical assistance, and 5, energy affordability. Additionally, we'll focus on technology and artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, workforce readiness for formerly incarcerated persons, and opportunity zones. Our nation is quickly becoming a majority-minority population, meaning we are the most diverse nation in the world. Those who live in these communities understand the economic and energy problems facing their communities better than anyone in Washington ever could, and we need to make sure their voices are heard and incorporated into every effort we pursue. With every vision, there is a starting point. It has taken time and much effort from within and outside of DOE to get this initiative rolling since it was first introduced and launched back in 2018. As we pick up momentum, we simply have to support the cultivation of the workforce in minority communities to meet employment needs for decades to come. In short, we are doing this by assisting minority businesses to enter the energy sector, closing the STEM gap, providing a trained, certified, and competent labor pool to meet the demand for energy jobs in the next decade and decades to come, embracing American energy dominance. To further help accomplish these goals, our office recently embarked on a historic partnership with the Department of Commerce's Office of Minority Business Development Agency to collaborate on investing resources to support diversity initiatives. Now, STEM education and jobs are a means of impacting the future, and that is why we're working with agencies like MBDA and Commerce to help our mission as a whole. DOE has obligated more than $7 million in financial assistance. Our office also recently issued 10 grants on the Minority Education Workforce Training Program, totaling nearly $4 million, with a focus on workforce development, technical assistance, capacity building, and STEM education and training. Additionally, these awards will impact over 60 opportunity zones and demonstrate government leading by example during a critical and challenging time in our nation. As we envisioned back in 2018 and press forward with creativity because of the pandemic, Equity and Energy continues to make a great impact. This year, in addition to what I have mentioned above, our office hosted our first virtual intern program led by our Minority Educational Institutions Division. 43 students were hosted by the department experiencing opportunities in science, technology, engineering, math, and business. Because of this step forward, we have learned that many students that are unavailable to participate in in-person internships are excited about the possibilities of the virtual platform that allows them to maintain their family responsibilities while gaining vital experience in the working world. The last few months, we have begun expanding our outreach to a virtual platform by discussing best practices and supporting returning citizens during our Workforce Readiness for Formerly Incarcerated Persons webinar. We are building a whole training platform to include in-person, on-demand, and webinar resources to ensure that we don't miss any opportunity to help our stakeholders. All these efforts serve as good examples of how we are reimagining the means in which we do what we do to keep equity and energy moving forward. It is now my distinct pleasure to present a message on behalf of the 15th Secretary of the Department of Energy, Dan Brouillette. Secretary Brouillette has 3 decades of experience in both the public and private sector. Most recently, he was the Senior Vice President and Head of Public Policy for USAA, the nation's leading provider of financial services to the military community. Before joining USAA, Secretary Brouillette was a vice president at the Ford Motor Company, where he led the automaker's domestic policy teams and served on his North American Operating Committee. We are extremely grateful for his great leadership here at the DOE. And now I would like to have a message played by the Secretary.
Thank you for that introduction. And let me express my gratitude to Paula Glover and her team for inviting me to speak today and join your conversation. And let me also convey my appreciation to the Association of Blacks in Energy for the good you do throughout each year. I think we can all agree that 2020 has been a tough year for America and for the world. We've experienced the rise and spread of COVID-19 at every level. Prior to its arrival, our economy was prospering, and African Americans and other minority citizens were benefiting in historic ways, with wages rising and unemployment rates plummeting to the lowest levels in our lifetime. And a big reason was President Trump's success in removing regulations that destroyed jobs and inhibited business development, while creating opportunity zones to steer investment to economically depressed areas, including minority neighborhoods. The President's focus on deregulation also unleashed innovation, making America an energy-independent country, a global energy powerhouse, and a prolific creator of energy-related jobs. With millions of jobs coming back over the past 2 months, we have high hopes that progress will resume. But let's be clear, this pandemic has set us back in critical ways. The civil unrest of recent weeks is a further blow, especially to minority-owned businesses and their employees in the hardest hit areas. It made many people ponder America's journey on the road to racial progress. It made me think about my own life as a young boy in Louisiana, at a time near the long-awaited end of the Jim Crow era. Those were the days when Martin Luther King Jr. marched on Washington, and the late John Lewis, who passed away last month, put his life on the line by crossing a bridge in Alabama. It also reminded me of the time I spent in the U.S. military. The color that most servicemen and women see is more in the uniform they wear than the skin beneath it. As an Army veteran, I'd like to remind my Chief of Staff, who's a Navy man, that my uniform really does look better, and that's not even close. But truth be told, most servicemen and women could also see beyond the uniform to what Dr. King had called the content of people's character. This is what America at its best strives to be. It's about supporting opportunity for all. It's about making educational opportunity a reality for everyone in this country. It's about mentoring children and firing up their interest in educational paths that can change their lives. It's about actively recruiting qualified, talented African Americans and other minorities for the exciting jobs of the future. This is what our employees across the Department of Energy absolutely want. And it's what our department's Office of Economic Impact and Diversity, or ED as we call it, is clearly about. It's what ED's Equity and Energy Initiative is about as well. In every DOE program and across the energy realm, Equity and Energy seeks to expand the inclusion and participation of people in underserved communities, including the African American community. Equity and Energy is 5 pillars: workforce development, supplier diversity, technical assistance, STEM enhancement, and energy affordability. Each pillar is centered on the dual mission of igniting interest and providing access. Today, I'm delighted to announce that Equity and Energy is launching its full complement of initiatives. Our ED office will unveil more than 20 ambassadors consisting of industry leaders and community stakeholders and several internal DOE champions. In addition to Equity and Energy, I'm proud to report that since January of this year, ED has had a new Energy Workforce Division. Located within the Office of Minority Programs, this division is charged with creating the energy workforce of tomorrow. The Energy Workforce Division has identified several key groups that can benefit from obtaining work in the energy sector. They include veterans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, women, formerly incarcerated individuals, and other minority communities. As I speak, the Energy Workforce Division is constructing interactive workforce development resource maps and toolkits that will enable access to programs across America that support career training in energy. ED recently awarded 10 grants, totaling approximately $3.9 million for the Minority Education Workforce and Training Program. The 10 awards had 5 focus areas, including workforce development, technical assistance, capacity building, STEM education, and training. This program will serve over 60 of the qualified opportunity zones set up by President Trump to transform some of America's most impoverished communities into greenhouses of job and business growth. And I would encourage those of you who seek to grow your business and to make a real difference in people's lives and their communities to look at these zones. As we look into the future, I would encourage all of us to think about the next generation of Americans, including minority students. We must reach out to our young people with the message that STEM careers in particular can be among the most exciting, fulfilling, rewarding, and lucrative adventures in the world. STEM jobs, and especially those in the energy fields, can literally change the world. With energy jobs, you can land a rover on Mars, study the smallest particles in the universe, and create tomorrow's clean energy technology. It's a moral imperative that we make every effort to expose African American and other minority students to the world of STEM. But besides being a moral imperative, it's also a practical necessity because America's STEM needs are enormous and we need an all-hands-on-deck approach to fill them. For the sake of our energy security, our economic security, and our national security, we must draw upon all of America's available talent and ability across every part of society. And as a STEM-driven agency, our department is committed to doing just that. That's why at ED we've provided grant money to historically black colleges and universities and other institutions to encourage minorities embarking on STEM education and STEM careers. It's why at our Office of Fossil Energy, we have the Mickey Leland Fellowship, a 10-week summer internship program to improve STEM opportunities for gifted minority as well as female students. And it's why at our Sandia National Lab, we have a summer intern program for middle and high school students by the Black Leadership Committee. Let me close by thanking AABE again for the good that you've done and for the good that I'm confident you will do in the coming years. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to a better, brighter future.
Good afternoon. My name is Neri Martinez, and I serve as Chief of Staff, Economic Impact and Diversity. Many thanks to Secretary Bruyette for that inspiring and passionate message. He has always been a steadfast supporter of diversity efforts, and his support of the Office of ED and Equity and Energy is highly valued. It is now my pleasure to introduce our fireside chat participants, the Honorable Director James Campos, and our esteemed guest today, the National Director of the Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, David Byrd. We are so fortunate to have him join us here at headquarters again since his most recent visit to participate in a historic signing of an MOU between our office and MBDA. David Byrd was appointed as the National Director of the U.S. Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency on June 15th, 2020. Mr. Byrd is the 18th National Director of the agency. In his role, he oversees the development and implementation of agency initiatives, policy agenda, and federal grant programs. Mr. Byrd joined MBDA as the National Deputy Director in October 2019 after serving as the Deputy Assistant Secretary, Office of Policy Development at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Prior to accepting the fourth presidential appointment of his career at MBDA, Mr. Byrd worked on President Trump's transition team as a talent scout for executive appointments and on the HUD Agency Action Team, organizing the blueprint for HUD policy and personnel infrastructure. His more than 28 years of dedicated public service at all levels is one of the many reasons we are so proud to partner with him today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Neri. You just remind me that I'm an old guy and I've been around a long time.
It's a pleasure to be here today with Director Byrd. He's been a good colleague, a good friend of mine, and someone that I've spoke to on many occasions back in his days at HUD and now at Commerce. And we've discussed so many great things moving forward between our two offices and how we can truly impact the minority communities that we serve and how we can unite across agencies and working towards similar goals. Of course, mine being in the energy world and his being a little more broad at Commerce, but we can do so much together. So I'm very grateful for you to be here today. I'm grateful that you accepted, and I look forward to another chat with us.
Yeah, listen, Jim, you guys are doing some great stuff here, and I'm really happy that MBDA and the Office of Minority Economic Impact have signed this MOU, as we did a couple of weeks ago, to work together. I mean, I've been a fan of the office for quite a long time. I knew some folks who worked in that office back in Bush 1 and Bush 2. And so I've just been, when you announced last year, when you invited me over here about the whole concept of equity and energy, I thought it was a great idea. I'm an admirer of what you've done already in helping those who are formerly incarcerated land jobs with energy companies where you've helped them eliminate the background checks, not necessary for those to get jobs, because as you know, we have a program at MBDA where we turn the formerly incarcerated into entrepreneurs. So what I'd like to ask you is, in what you're doing in equity and energy and what you've already done with that program with the formerly incarcerated, what do you see the pressing need in the energy industry now?
So let me give you a quick backdrop. This originally came to my mind when I was speaking at the Western Texas Legislative Conference about almost 2 years ago, and I was there was a small reception after I spoke, and I was talking to an individual named Wayne Christian, who's the chairman of the Railroad Commission, and he was going on telling me how great the economy was in the Permian Basin and the growth of the energy sector, generally speaking, in the great state of Texas, and how they couldn't fulfill the jobs, how there weren't enough people to drive the trucks, up and down the pipeline, different opportunities. And it came to me in realization that this is a great opportunity for something that our administration is doing a lot with prison reentry programs and the one-step program and so forth, that I thought this was a great opportunity for us in the energy world to get involved in something that was important, and that's helping those individuals that leave incarceration and to provide them a chance at a life as well, something that pays them more than minimum wage, something that's sustainable and viable for the future. And I thought it was my responsibility to bring it here and to ask that at that time it was Secretary Rick Perry and then of course Secretary Briette, and to ask them for their thoughts and for their permission to start a program here. And to my delight, they both agreed and allowed me to start this program. And to answer your question, the program really consists of, at the moment, of developing infrastructure, a structure on how to get the connectivity with those energy companies that need personnel badly, even though at this moment, we're going through a little bit of a hiccup because of the pandemic, our economy is revved to go and is going to continue to grow, and our energy sector economies are doing phenomenal, and I'm really bullish on this, and I know our economy is going to be doing great and is doing good. And this is an opportunity for those leaving incarceration to have a chance to connect with those companies out there that need the jobs, and it's vice versa. They need, we need. So it was an important initiative, and we're developing it with a few people on my staff and developing that connectivity of sorts, but then also providing opportunities for awareness, access, education portals, and so forth. So we're at the beginning of this, but it's a great start, and it's an important start for our country.
I think it's just terrific, Jim. I think it's just terrific.
I'd like to ask you a question now, since you jumped the line a little bit here. I was supposed to ask the first question.
That's all right. Go ahead.
What is your strategic vision for MBDA, and what are some of the key priorities as we prepare for the upcoming fiscal year in relation to the renewed partnership between ED and MBDA?
You know, that's a good question, because literally in the last month, I just had a management retreat with my staff for the first time, with the management team. And I really, as part of what we go through, and I'm sure you're going through it here, we had to list what our plans are for the next fiscal year and beyond. So a couple of things that I'm going to do. Of course, you know, we have this, Med Week is coming up next month, where it's going to be the 34th year in a row. This is the biggest thing that we do during the year to highlight minority-owned businesses, entrepreneurs across the country. That continues to be one of the big things we do every year. We have a great, I told you about our program where we turn formerly incarcerated into entrepreneurs. One of our vendors in that is Georgetown University, and they just graduated a class literally in the last couple of weeks of another class that went through of people who've gone through the program. Another program that we have, great, we call Enterprising Women of Color, where we work, 25% of all new businesses in this country are started by women of color. And we have a series of webinars. We've gone into the virtual space. Med Week is being done virtually. We have a series of webinars. On our last webinar for the Enterprising Women of Color, we had 2,500 women on a webinar, and our guest was Taraji P. Henson from the Empire Show series. Going forward, there's a couple of things, Jim, and I think you guys would be very interested in what we're doing. Number one, I'm going to focus on the next fiscal year on minority-owned businesses that are owned by veterans. I don't see enough emphasis on veterans, minority-owned vets who own businesses. Another place that I'm going is the business of space. Not the space between you and I, but outer space, okay? There's a whole business, ever since the space shuttle was retired, and NASA has basically outsourced the business of space to Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed Martin. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but we don't see minority-owned businesses in that opportunity. And space has a lot to do with what you guys are doing, rockets, propulsion, all that good stuff. There is a huge, huge opportunity there. And as you know, the president just signed an executive order several months ago that gave these companies the right to start mining the moon and other bodies out there, Mars, asteroids, whatever. Who knows what we might find out there, great things that we could turn down here, create new energy sources here on Earth. So those are a couple of things that I'm going to focus on as we're going forward. And as part of that with the MOU with you, I'm really looking forward to us opening the door to the federal labs, to your new AI office here at Energy that you just opened up. You guys are already doing something with the Department of Veterans Affairs with the supercomputers that you're doing with Veterans Health. We put together a new policy office that we want to put together some research and crunch some data. I think there's some real synergies there between the two of us to do some great things.
That's great. That's great. Now it's your turn to ask me a question.
Well, the thing that I would ask you is, you've got this great initiative, Equity and Energy. You've signed this MOU with us. I've told you what I see us doing. What do you, and your staff and our staff work very well together, and by the way, in putting this MOU together. Angela Washington of my staff, Kelly Mitchell of your staff, Manny Rosales of your staff, your whole team really did a great job in helping put this together. What do you see from working with us that really adds value to what you guys are already doing?
I think the biggest thing, with our two offices, since we share so much in common, of course, our office focused on the energy sectors.
You do what we do. It's just that you just focus on energy.
Energy, correct. But with that, with equity and energy, and as the secretary said, and I said in my opening speech, and that is interest and access. That's the core of what we're doing. There is no pillars without the interest and access. We have a lack of interest in minority communities in what we do in energy. We have the lack of interest. And then even if we can garner the interest, we then have the lack of access or perceived access. So it's getting out there, it's talking to various stakeholders, various groups in general, and promoting and having these communities understand just what kind of opportunities exist in energy and just what we're doing. Energy is our economy. Energy is all around. As I often say, from the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep, and even while we're sleeping, energy is with us. And it's so important, all of our energy sectors. It's so important to the whole matrix of what propels our nation going forward. And again, as I mentioned, I'm very bullish on energy, and I'm very bullish on our country, and I'm very bullish on maintaining a dominance in energy, because it really does separate the haves and the have-nots, as we see in the world, and also as a leadership position to help the world. And as I see the connection with MBDA and what you're doing, it's an expansion of the awareness to the communities at large on what energy is doing and where we're going and how important it is. And also it's about explaining what some of our national treasures, which is 17 national labs we have, and what they do and how important those national labs are to everything we do in the fabric of our nation. So it's really getting out there, it's explaining. We are a majority K through 12 right now. We're a majority country by 2044, give or take a few years. And the part about that that's concerning is the lack of interest in minority communities matriculating into STEM fields. We're already 2 million STEM jobs short as of next year. Numbers don't lie when you have matriculation in the African American community, Hispanic community at 5 or 6% respectively. Well, the numbers don't add up, and we already are short in STEM jobs, and we can't H-1 visa out of this issue. We have to start here. We're all Americans. We're in it together, and I'm going to do whatever I can to promote the interest and access to the communities, and that's why MBDA is so important, because we have to do this as a whole government approach. We're all in together, and we're only going to succeed and be as successful as we should be, and we will be, by joining and doing things together.
You know, I liked what you said earlier, and I've said this too, is that energy is like air. You don't miss it unless you don't have it. You know, a couple of years ago, I went to see the doctor, and the doctor said to me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Because I'm having problems breathing." She said, "That's a problem." And well, it's the same thing with energy. If you flip on the switch, or there's a hurricane or storm and the lights of the power is gone, as we had a derecho here in this area several years ago, and the power was out for over a week in this area, that was a problem, okay? And people don't realize it until you don't have it.
It's a huge problem. I've had the chance to live in over 12 countries, and I live in those countries that are economically challenged. And you understand energy and the lack of energy and how it affects those nations at large. And, you know, we don't have those issues here per se, but I want to make sure we never have those issues here, and that's by making sure that everyone's included in the energy economy. So it's important. So I appreciate what you do with us and to help us. And this is meant to be built for decades to come. What we're doing today here and what we're planning is not meant just for, you know, a few years. It's meant to be a foundation so that the next people that inherit our positions don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we can go forward and progress in that one nation goal of making sure that we keep energy independence and dominance. So I appreciate our collaboration. Now I have a question for you.
Please, please.
How can the DOE-ED support MBDA in its visions to ensure that minority firms are able to grow and maintain competitive in the energy sector?
You know, Jim, I think one of the things that we need to do, and before we leave here today, and to answer that question, is that we need to call out our friends here today who are with us at the conference and the organization to really help us in the energy utility sector. because one of the things I think need to be done and can help us in MBDA and MBDA sector is opportunity zones, okay, which is one of the administration's #1 priorities. And one of the things that I've challenged and I've said about the energy sector, utility companies in particular, energy companies, is that they should look at the opportunity zones in the service areas where they are, and that they should look at those areas and see what they can to develop those economically distressed areas that are in opportunity zones. Not asking them to look all over the country, just look in the service area, Duke Power, Jersey Central Power and Light, other places around the country, what used to be called Atlantic Electric's now Atlantic Energy. All these places in their service areas, look at where they are, help develop the opportunity zones in those areas, and then invest or work with the minority businesses that are located in those opportunity zones. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that go beyond their immediate universe in recruiting, and this is what this organization is about, recruiting minority executives for opportunities in the energy field. There's a lot of talented folks that you and I know out there whose skills are transferable, whether they be from the military, whether they be from other sectors or agencies that are transferable into the energy fields. We have to start looking at the skills that people bring to the table, not the jobs that they did, but the skills that they bring to the table. Because we know, you and I both know, a lot of times skill sets are transferable.
Sure, absolutely. And there's so much that we can do together, and there's so much that we need to do together. And again, it's about a whole government approach. It's about combining our resources, combining our talent that we have between our offices, participating in conferences like AABE, in associations, and really growing that network, for generations to come. We owe it to our country. We owe it to the taxpayers. We owe it to the oaths that we took for this country. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to do the best that I can to connect with people like yourself and others to make sure that we're delivering. Because at the end of the day, it's about delivering success. And there's no better area to deliver success for our country. It's about our country, it's about our people in our country, and it's about all the communities as a whole. Because if we all don't take part of it, then we're not winning the way we should. And we want to win.
Well, I just want to tell you, MBDA, it not looks, but is right there with you. We are thrilled to be working with your office because we have the same mission. Our mission is a little bit broader, but your mission is the same as ours, except you're focused in on the energy and the utility industry. You're almost as old as we are. We were started in 1969. I think you were started in 74 or 78.
71.
71.
41 years old.
Okay, all right. So we are just a little bit older than you guys, and but it shows the staying power, and the reason why both of our offices were created still exists today. We have morphed into MBEs, but we started out as for black-owned businesses, and the famous Black Capitalism Program started out from the office, from the aegis of our office, and now has morphed into what we're doing today to minority-owned businesses. When we started out, 330,000 minority-owned businesses in the country. Today, 11 million that represent $1.6 trillion to the U.S. economy.
And that's huge, and I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I did want to just state that the growing entrepreneur class in this country is from the minority communities. But the sad thing about this, as it concerns energy, is it's a small percentage. So in my job and what MBDA can help is help to promote energy opportunities and entrepreneurialism within energy, to these communities, because it's vital, because as we all know, many of the great innovations and technology advancements have come from entrepreneurs in their garages at times, so this is something we have to do a better job, because we have to keep a healthy and vibrant energy economy. And at the Department of Energy, we have such great resources, and we have great offices, and we'll hear from some of the leaders of those offices on a panel, from fossil fuels to OTT to ones that aren't here as well, nuclear, electricity, but we cover the gamut here at the DOE, and each of these departments offers so much to the fabric of the energy community in the United States and throughout the world. And it's so important that we're here speaking to the AABE conference and explain to them what we do and how we do it and the great talent that we have here. So it's an exciting opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity to address and to be part of the AABE conference. It's an exciting opportunity to hear from such great speakers that we have coming up next on the panels, and to have you here and for your cooperation, your partnership. I can't say enough. We have a lot of things to do. As we talked about after signing the MOU, now the work begins. I'm excited about the work. I'm excited about our future, and I'm excited about our country. So I thank you.
Well, Jim, I just want to end on this because there's a lot of talent in America, and we've got to recognize that, and we shouldn't limit talent to thinking that the only people that have a college degree are the ones that have talent. Got to remember that Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, college dropouts, and that the Wright brothers were bicycle repairmen.
Well, even listen. That's why and one of the pillars, it's STEM enhancement. STEM enhancement means enhancement in the STEM field. It doesn't have to be a 4-year degree. It doesn't have to be a PhD or a master's, degree. It can be a 6-month certificate. It's very important. And you're right. You look at Steve Jobs. You look at other entrepreneurs. The Roe McCoy, for instance. That great invention by a African American scientist / mechanic in his garage that saved cars. In the drip oil pan.
Absolutely.
So there's so many things that are happening in garages or in backyards.
Right.
And it comes from entrepreneurialism. It comes from individuals from all diverse communities, and we have to tap into it. We can't lose that talent. We have to engage that talent. We have to bring it forward. Of course, I'm advocating for energy. I want them to come over to energy, but it's good for our whole economy. We have to do a better job at attracting these communities, including women, including veterans. And we can do this. It's not if, it's how we're going to do it and how successful we're going to be.
But we need energy, Jim, because batteries, we can't always hook into something. So we got to have batteries. We've got to have things that can power things. And by the way, when I was a kid, my mother bought me one of the first record players that was powered by a battery.
Now, I'm not going to ask you what year that was. That's fantastic. And I'm not sure, do we still have time? We have 2 minutes here, so I guess what I just want to state and make sure that everyone knows out there in the virtual world on our cooperation with the Department of Commerce and MBDA, but our mission to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to provide the awareness and the access to the great energy sectors and how well that the Department of Energy, under the leadership of Secretary Brouillette and others, Deputy Secretary Mark Menzies, and their leadership and their focus with this administration, and what a wonderful job they're doing and allowing us and allowing myself to do what I do. It's so imperative to our country, the Department of Energy, and where we're going in the future. So I can't say enough, and I thank this opportunity to Paula Glover and for her whole staff.
And Jim, thank you again. Thank you to my staff and yours who helped make this possible. And I also want to give a thanks to my Secretary, Wilbur Ross, and Deputy Secretary Karen Dunn Kelly for the support that she's given me and MBDA to continue to move forward for good initiatives like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Equity in Energy is so proudly supported by the entire DOE enterprise, and we are thrilled to present some of the leading champions today on 2 panels moderated by Dr. Christopher Metzler, a noted speaker, author, legal scholar, professor, and on-camera television and digital personality. He provides expert commentary on U.S. and global affairs, politics, human rights, human capital, diversity, healthcare, sexual harassment, trending topics, and law, and has also been featured in numerous publications and media outlets. Dr. Metzler was educated at the University of Oxford in Oxford, England, and Columbia University, obtained a PhD in international legal philosophy from the University of Aberdeen, and serves as a non-executive chairman in the Global Healthcare Enterprise. We are so grateful to have you moderating these panels, Dr. Metzler, and we welcome you here today.
Thank you. Such an honor and a pleasure to be here at the Department of Energy, talking about equity in energy. And so I am going to be joined by a powerhouse panel as we talk today about some of the things that are necessary relative to diversity, relative to energy, all of those kinds of things. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first panel, Assistant Secretary Winberg and Director Fall. Please join us. So, gentlemen, just give us a brief background as to who you are, where you work, what you do, and then we'll get right into it.
All right. Well, my name is Stephen Winberg. My name is Stephen Winberg, and I'm the Assistant Secretary for Fossil Energy. We have the Fossil Energy Office has responsibility for all the coal and oil and natural gas research, and so that's a fairly sizable piece of what we do. We also have responsibility for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The SPRO, as we call it, is celebrating about 43 years now. It was started back in the first oil embargo, and there's just a few of us in this room that were maybe alive during that time. And the United States built about 750 million barrels of storage capacity in Louisiana and Texas, and it is there and available, storing crude oil in the event that there is a shortage of oil, or if there's a hurricane that comes up the Houston Ship Channel and takes out crude production. But interestingly enough, on the SPRO, because of COVID, we now have a new mission. And that mission is because of the demand destruction that we saw due to COVID, people weren't driving cars, they weren't flying, and so we had this huge petroleum demand destruction. And refineries were able to ramp down quicker than production. So we had all of this crude. You may have read about it floating around the oceans in tankers. And so we opened up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and we brought in about 20 million barrels of crude that had no home. And now, even as we speak, that crude is being taken out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and moved back into the market. So it created a buffer, if you will. And then the third area that we have responsibility for is liquefied natural gas authorizations. And that has been growing quite rapidly. These numbers may not mean anything to you, but right now we have the capability of exporting about 8 billion cubic feet per day of U.S. LNG all over the world to our friends and allies in Europe and Asia. The end of this year, it'll go to 10. And within the next several years, it'll go to 15 billion cubic feet. We've actually authorized about 45 billion cubic feet, but not all of that has reached a final investment decision. But it's indicative of the natural resource, natural gas and oil that we have in this country. So we are no longer dependent on imports from countries that may not necessarily be our friends. And now we can not only supply our own needs, but we can also export to our friends and allies around the world. And just one more comment on that, our ability to export oil and natural gas, it really has had profound geopolitical benefits
to the United States and again to our friends and allies around the world. So that's what I do in my day job.
Oh, good. Thank you. So, Director Fall, let's see if you can top that.
I'm not going to even try. We have a much simpler mission in the Office of Science. First of all, thanks, James, and thanks, Dr. Metzler, for having me here today. We have a pretty simple mission in the Department of, a concise mission in the Department of Energy's Office of Science. It's deliver scientific discoveries, scientific tools, and scientific facilities to transform our understanding of nature, advance the energy, economic, and national security of the United States. And to do that, we provide grants to universities across the country, to companies across the country, and of course we steward 10 of the 17 Department of Energy national laboratories.
Okay, great. So given that, so I'm going to go back to you, Assistant Secretary. A part of what you talked about relative to the strategic petroleum reserve, the geopolitical aspect of this, and given all of the opportunities there, how can an organization such as AABE help you fulfill that mission?
Well, I think if you look across, let me broaden it out a little
Sure.
bit. Look across the fossil energy space, if you will, and for that matter, probably applies to my colleagues from the Nuclear Energy Office and from the EERE, the
Yes.
Energy Efficient and Renewable Energy, and the Office of Electricity. All of these offices have an aging workforce, and we've been talking about age quite a bit so far here. Our average age is 51 years old.
Wow.
So we've got people, we need to start filling mid-level positions.
Yes.
And there is just a tremendous opportunity to bring in minorities, to bring in women. I'm the father of 3 daughters and a partially disabled son. Now, I'm embarrassed to tell you that none of the 4 are in energy, and that's because several years ago at dinner, one of my daughters, the eldest one, got the short straw, and she told me that, Dad, when we hear you talk about your job, it's more interesting to watch paint dry. So they're doing other things. But my point is, in the energy space, and James talked about this as well, there is a real need for people
Yes.
to take us into the next several decades. And I think we're doing marginally okay, but we need more minorities, we need more women, we need more underrepresented people in not only in the Department of Energy, but also in the energy space, in the private sector. And I saw that in the 40 years I spent in the private sector.
Yeah, because it seems to me it's a combination of employees and entrepreneurs that will make this work. So internally, looking at folks in the department, you pair that with folks who are entrepreneurial in this space. It seems to me that there is a tremendous opportunity for an organization such as AABE and others to help fulfill that mission.
Absolutely. Maybe I can give you a little example.
Sure.
What people call the shale revolution. We call it unconventional oil and gas production.
Yes.
Started here at the Department of Energy, about $140 million investment that we made in the late 80s and some in the early 90s. And then to your point, private sector took it and ran with it.
Right.
And from that, we have now tens of billions of dollars of economic activity in the United States from a $140 million investment. Now, that's a lot of money, but when you compare it to what we have now achieved with that, and that's where the entrepreneurs
Yes.
come in that the previous panel was talking about.
Precisely. So, Director Fall, same question.
Well, in basic science, we're all about ideas. We're all about discovery, and so the idea of building maintaining, sustaining diversity is critical to our mission. We're looking for, what we don't want is to have a team of people that all come from the same place and all have the same experience and all think the same way. And so it's critical to our mission. It's the right thing to do for social justice, but it's critical to our mission to have the best ideas, and that's going to come from a diverse group of inputs.
Well, and perhaps the diverse input can come up with a way to watch paint dry that is not
Make it
as
dry
boring.
faster. We can
That would certainly be a discovery. So as we talk about moving into equity, diversity, et cetera, so who are some of the key stakeholders who you need to involve both internally and externally? So, Secretary, I'll start with you.
Sure. Externally, we start at the universities. STEM has been talked about a little bit here, and that's our starting point. And historically black universities and other institutes that are working with minorities, the underrepresented communities,
Yes.
that we need to bring in. And so starting with the STEM education, and we have a program which we call the Mickey Leland Energy Fellowship Program, and it was named after Mickey Leland, an African-American congressman who actually passed legislation that started James's office. Well, that has been remarkably successful for us. We've had now 1,000 interns that have come through the program. And let me give you some stats on those 1,000 interns. And I have to read them because I don't remember it all. We are now in our 25th year, so 1,025 years. 95% of those 1,000 people are now in the STEM workforce.
Wow.
That's a very high percentage. 44% have advanced degrees, and that's compared to a national average of 11%.
Yeah.
So that program is working. And this year, our 25th year, we had 52 fellows from 43 colleges, 21 states, plus Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. This was the first year that we did this virtually. So think about this. We brought in some grad students, but also undergrads, and we said, okay, you're not going to be involved in the office. You're not going to have an office. You're going to work, telework, like many of us are doing, and we're going to give you an assignment. And so we did. And this is what we've traditionally done, except they had to really be self-motivated this year because there was no one literally or figuratively looking over their shoulder. Right. And I got to tell you, I had an opportunity to sit and listen to a number of the presentations. We give them real work to do, and then they have to present at the end to the other interns and to management, our staff and senior management. And this is the third year that I've had the honor of participating in this. And I can tell you, I tell them this, and it's absolutely true. My two takeaways. When I listen to these kids, they're not kids, young adults, and the work that they do, I think, I feel dumber than a stump. And number two, I have huge confidence in our future here in the United States because these young adults are really bright, they're motivated, and I hope they come back and work at DOE and in particular come work in my office.
So same question, Director Fall.
Well, I told you earlier that we're responsible for the basic science mission,
Yes.
and so we have these 10 national laboratories. That's 35,000 people. We support 25,000 or so folks across the university space, and then also a whole bunch of companies through the SBIR program and other grants. So those are our constituents, but in the formal sense, but I echo what Steve said, and that is really kids are our future. We understand that. I mean, we have to be thinking, if you're talking about someone with a PhD working in a national laboratory, and that's not everybody. That's a long road, right? That's a long road. That's 20-something longer, maybe closer to 30 years of education. I don't remember. Long time in school.
Yeah.
You got to think long, and so we have to start early, and they really are our future. We couldn't do what we do without, we can't do what we need to do without great STEM educated students, and so I would put them at the top of the list.
Okay, so we've been talking about some of the success. We've talked about the stakeholders. Now let's talk about what some of the challenges are, because as we're talking about this whole new venture in terms of energy, the opportunities that are coming up, what are some of the challenges that we're facing in this new era?
Great question. We're going through an energy transition. And the speed with which we go through that transition is going to vary from country to country, even state to state. But it is going to happen. How quickly? I don't know. But it is happening. We see it happening. And so one of the challenges that we have is that many people in the energy space or in the policy space want to eliminate certain fuels.
Yes.
And in my world, that's coal and oil and natural gas.
Yeah.
We can all do it with renewables, and we can drive our car, everyone will have a Tesla, and it'll all work out really well. Except take a look at what's happening in California even as we speak.
Yeah.
It's not quite working out like we planned. And so there's going to be this transition. And there is a tendency, from a policy perspective in some quarters, to eliminate certain fuels. And I think that's bad policy, because what Chris and his folks do, the early stage research, which then comes over to us because we're more applied, there is an enormous amount of emerging technology that will allow us to use all forms of energy and do it at virtually zero emissions. And so if we take certain forms of energy out right now, and coal probably is one of the ones that everyone wants, not everyone, but a lot of people want to get rid of, we're doing it too early, because we have technology that's on the cusp of being commercialized that will allow us to use that, that abundant resource that we have in the United States. And the reason that it gets back to bringing in the new workforce is because a lot of what these young people are hearing is that you need to get rid of fossil energy. And I challenge people on that, because we've got technology that can solve the problem. And so let's not eliminate that fuel. Let's let the marketplace decide which fuel they're going to use.
Yeah, and that's always, I think, the conversation with coal. It seems that coal has had a very bad reputation. And, as I always ask the question, why are people hating on coal? I mean, there are quite a few haters relative to coal. The question becomes, since it exists, how do we then make other uses of it? What are other things that can be done rather than simply just eliminating it out of consideration altogether?
Yeah, absolutely, and we're looking at that, and that's why we need these bright young minds to come in and help us do this. And I'll tell you one thing that we're looking at, and that is not using the heating value of coal, but using the carbon value of coal to make products. And we can replace the wood in this table.
Right.
We can replace roofing shingles, the decking material you have on the back of your home or your apartment, that can be made out of a product made from coal. Mm-hmm. And so we're using that natural resource without creating any greenhouse gas emissions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Director?
Challenges are people.
Yeah.
I would say.
The mic doesn't seem to be on.
Well,
Oh,
there we go.
there we go.
The voice. The pipeline. So, I mentioned our science mission, and so that's obviously, folks looking at basic research tend to be highly trained, but to run our research operation, to build these laboratories and the big machines like the colliders and the light sources. That also takes skilled trades. It takes technical help to keep them running, keep them maintained, and improve them. And we're short in all of these areas. We really need all sorts of engineering, that goes into that as well. So it's not just about science. And so that's a problem. And on the science side, we've got a general issue in this country that extends across all demographics, and that's that American kids don't go into science the way they used to, and so we have a national competitiveness issue as well too. So getting kids of all backgrounds to get into science is important.
Okay, and so I want to talk now about the link between diversity and innovation, because I think that's a critical component as we talk about, and as you both indicated earlier, we don't want to have the same people, whether it's race, age, thinking styles, whatever it is. It isn't very helpful to consistently have the same people working in the workplace because you get the same results. It seems to me that that's fairly basic. So from the standpoint of, could you tie diversity to innovation? If so, how would that work? What would it look like in your view?
Well, I think you're exactly right. Any group tends to get into groupthink.
Yeah.
If you don't constantly replenish with new ways of thinking, new processes, and so forth, and from my vantage point, I think there are a lot of new ideas out there that maybe are just in the very beginning stages. And if we don't encourage those people with those ideas, or those people that have a passion for getting into energy, in the case of the Department of Energy, if we don't encourage that, those ideas will never surface. They'll never bubble up to the surface. And so for me, it comes back to STEM education. We just need to do this across our education system. And Dr. Fall's exactly correct that we have an absence of young people that want to get into STEM education. Or if they do, at least in my world, it's more interesting for them to get into some form of IT or computer technology than old-fashioned fossil energy producing and transporting and using it. And so it's a constant struggle. But if we don't get that innovative thinking in, we can't get to the point where we can use all of these energy resources, because we are going to go through an energy transition, like it or not. And without the right minds and the right talent, I think as I said before, we drop some of them off the table.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is making science and energy sexy again. It seems to me that that's a large part of the issue. So
and look at Chris and me, for crying out loud.
Wow. Awesome.
Take it away, Chris.
So on that note,
How do you follow that? I don't.
on that note,
Go ahead, Chris. I was going to say, so if I think from my perspective, it's bad to be taking, trying to figure out the answer to a problem with a group of people that has the same background, looks the same, thinks the same. It's worse, it's compounded if the folks making the decision look like that group and the folks evaluating the work make that group. And so one thing that's central to most of what we do, I think across all our programs in the Department of Energy, is competition.
Yes.
So we try to have sort of one front door, and it's a wide front door. So, opening that catch base and making sure that all the ideas are getting in, all the ideas are getting evaluated is one way to make sure that they get through the sieve. Still want the best ideas to float to the top, but we don't want it to be because you know, it sounds like something I would do, or it sounds reasonable. It needs to be objectively sort of evaluated.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about, you know, a lot of stuff here. So what did we not talk about relative to diversity, energy, equity? I mean, the department has laid out, in my view, a very strategic approach to getting this done, and is partnering with AABE and a couple of other places. But what have we not talked about? What are we missing in this conversation?
Well, I think we maybe touched on this lightly, but the Department of Energy has a number of programs that are targeted at small business, disabled, veterans-owned businesses we talked about earlier, minority businesses.
Yes.
We have, let's see, I got to go to my stats table again. For example, $106 million in fiscal year 19 for minority small business procurement. In our Cole office, 100% of our support staff is a small and disadvantaged business. And so while we'd like the entrepreneurs and the really bright people to be coming into DOE to work as feds, there are huge opportunities for those same people with a bit of an entrepreneur spirit to become contractors for the Department of Energy, and there's programs that will allow them to understand how to become a contractor. And so I think on both sides, the Fed side as well as the private sector side, great opportunities, and we didn't really touch on that, but that's a big one.
Good, thank you. Director?
Well, I was gonna, you know, I think we're probably coming short on time. We have a lot of stuff we could talk about at our labs and programmatically that we're doing and incredibly proud of. But, you know, one thing that strikes me, because we're doing a lot right now, we're worried a lot about COVID and the COVID crisis and the impact that it's had on organizations. It strikes me that this is a time for a general reset, right? We don't think we're gonna come out of this necessarily the same way we came in terms of the workplace, how we work, where we work, how we interact. And boy, what an opportunity to do a reset on diversity and inclusion as well, because we don't need to come out of this the same way that we went into it there. I mean, you know, if we're paused for 6 months, 8 months, a year in normal life, that's a time to reflect. That's a time to think about doing things in a different way and building it in on the way back out the door, I think. Right,
absolutely. So gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you for bringing Sexy back to Cole. Thank you, gentlemen.
Should we need a picture?
Sure. Okay. So now we're going to go into our second panel, and we're going to look at, in the second panel, particularly the issue of innovation and security. So the panelists are going to join us on stage shortly, and we will dive right into the discussion. Okay, panelists, come on up. And so here, we're talking about innovation and security. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give us a brief introduction of yourself and just some opening remarks. Welcome.
Thank you. Is mic hot? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So thank you, Dr. Metzler
My
and Director
pleasure.
Campos, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm Cheryl Ingstead, the newer director of the AI and Technology Office in the Department of Energy. We're newly created just in September, and then I arrived in February. And since then, we've created our new strategic vision, which I'm really looking forward to discussing more of because it has to do with an AI-ready workforce. But a few things that I can say is we're a small team, a little under 10 right now, but growing. So looking forward to that growth trajectory over the next few months. And a few things that our strategic vision is really about is how do we ensure AI leadership for America in the future, and about our coordination role for AI activities across the entire enterprise. And also about a few other things that I'd like to highlight. So one is data. Data is so clearly vital to good AI. And here we're looking at how do we help the enterprise access the right data sets, ensure security around those data sets, and allow them to do what their operational specialty is instead of managing data. And when that data is properly tagged and located and secured, then it's it's in a good state to apply AI. So we're looking forward to that. And another area is also driving efficiencies with AI, applying AI internally. And this is something that the Secretary is extremely supportive of, and we look forward to really marching forward with that effort. And another area that I'll highlight is this cultivating an AI-ready workforce. And here I think we really see this connection between innovation and diversity. And so we look forward to cooperating with your program director, Campos, in the future on that. And also in our own internal hiring efforts as we're a growing office. So thank you, and I look forward to the questions.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon. Howdy, my name is Connor Prohaska, and I am the Chief Commercialization Officer for the Department of Energy and the Director of the Office of Technology Transitions, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, James Campos, for inviting me. Thank you, Dr. Metzler, for hosting. Director Bird, excited to have you here. And then, of course, Paula Glover and AABE. Excited to be here. This is my second time to be at a AABE type conference, and I'm eager to share a little bit of some updates that we've undertaken in the Office of Technology Transitions since the last time we chatted. First, I'll do a quick introduction to the Office of Technology Transitions for those that may not be familiar with it. The Office of Technology Transitions is really aimed towards how do we take the great research, some of which you just heard about from Dr. Fall and Assistant Secretary Winberg, how do we take that $18 billion a year of research and development that we do here at the Department of Energy and make sure that it has the maximum impact for the U.S. taxpayer in whatever form or shape that is. What we really want to concentrate on in the Office of Technology Transitions is how do we commercialize it, how do we get it out into the world, how do we make sure that we don't so much do what for a long time research has done, which I call the artillery method, which is just shooting it out there and hoping somebody catches it or somebody reads the publication, but a little more purposeful, a little more engaged, and a little more forward-leaning. And under this secretary and Secretary Perry, we've been given the resources and the capacity and the capability to do just that and really grow our footprint and grow our mission in making sure that we go out and get less people to say, I didn't know the Department of Energy was doing that, and make sure that we engage. Now, one of the ways that we do that, and one of the things I talked about specifically last time I talked to a group of AABE in Indianapolis, I believe, is we want to improve transparency. Because when we talk to a lot of our potential partners, they say what I just said, I didn't know the Department of Energy was doing that. And that ranges every time from where we send out money through a funding opportunity announcement to potentials to collaborate with my office or any of the offices here with the department. And so when we do that, one of the things that we've worked on in particular is rolling out a university toolkit, specifically working with HBCUs to make sure that there's more awareness of what opportunities are coming down the line. There's some giant universities across our country that have offices of tens, if not hundreds of people that just look to see where the dollars are coming from the Department of Energy. Not every university across our country can do that. So we want to make sure that we're being as transparent and open about what the opportunities are to work with the Department of Energy. The other big challenge is that it's tough to know who to call at the Department of Energy. I often put up a picture of the building we're sitting in, which is Forrestal, which if you look at it, it's probably the ugliest building in DC. And not many people ever push back on that. But the problem is you can't literally find the front door if you look at it. And we want to make sure that figuratively we are the front door to the department. We are not your final stop. What we're going to do is say that you should really go talk to Cheryl Ingstad over in the Office of Artificial Intelligence or Dr. Fall in the Office of Science. But we're going to try to make that connection because with 17 national labs spread across this country, it's tough to know who to call, and it's confusing even for people who work here in the Department of Energy to know who to call and what offices to connect with. So what we try to do is be that conduit. And so I'll start with this message and probably end with this message. If you're wondering who to call in the Department of Energy, it's 202-586-2000, 202-586-2000. If you call now, we'll give you 2 FOs for the price of 1, 2 grants for the price of 1. But call Office of Technology Transitions. We'll do everything we can to make sure that we connect you with the right people so that you can help us take that amazing technology that we'll talk a little bit about and that you heard Dr. Fall and Assistant Secretary Winberg talk about and make sure that it makes the maximum impact in our world and in our country. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is it already on? Oh, thank you. So thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Nick Anderson. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Security and Energy Restoration in our CSER office. Which, while it's not as new as AITO, for a little while we were the new office, with this being relatively recent, only chartered about 2 years ago, to take on that all hazards mission that the Department of Energy has. So our CSER office, our Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response Office, is the office within the Department of Energy that's charged with meeting the challenges of all hazards, whether those are natural disasters like we're tracking on today, where we see the impacts of a heat wave and the rolling blackouts that are affecting California, whether it's the effects of hurricanes and tropical depressions that we see with it being storm season, in particular with the Atlantic and the impacts we're seeing there this week, or it's wildfires affecting various communities. It's both to take that preparedness approach to prepare and to mitigate ahead of time, but also to respond when the time is right and to be good federal stewards and be good federal partners so we can rise to meet the challenges irrespective of what that hazard is. In particular, as we work to prepare the nation for meeting those challenges with critical infrastructure in particular, we try to identify what are those real link-ups between safety and economic value for our nation. Energy really is an apex critical infrastructure sector where we talk about the 17 critical infrastructure sectors, with our partners at the Department of Homeland Security and, of course, with the private sector. Energy really is an apex critical infrastructure sector. If we can't keep the lights on and can't keep the fuel sources flowing, nothing else is going to happen in this country. And in particular, we see that every time there's an outage. And gosh forbid, that there's an outage of the duration like we see in Iowa today, with some Iowans continuing to see the impacts of the derecho last week, where there's just really some of those final mile challenges between a utility pole and their homes to do those repairs. Those are things that impact people and their lives every single day. It is no longer a philosophical, societal discussion about critical infrastructure and how important it is and how it's important to our economy. It's about that neighbor down the street that doesn't have the resources they need to stay safe, to protect their family, and to receive the essential medical services that they might need. So we try to take that on, in particular with our private sector partners, because 85% of that critical infrastructure is owned within the private sector, and that partnership opportunity that we have within our preparedness and exercises division in particular is critically important to us, because we want to be able to partner ahead of time, develop good policies and good opportunities for government partnership, for training and education, and for workforce development opportunities. Because workforce development, truthfully, for us, is part of the longer-term solution to meeting these challenges, in particular within the cybersecurity realm. So one of the initiatives I wanted to highlight today on the workforce development side is one that we're doing with our colleges and universities, and it's our CyberForce competition. So annually, this is the only large cybersecurity competition across the United States that focuses on the energy sector challenges in particular, and it focuses on control systems and operational technology, the things that we don't really think of a lot of times when we're talking about cybersecurity challenges. We think about the computers that are on our desk, we think about the phones that are in our hand, we think about what's going to happen if I lose my password and somebody tries to move money out of my bank account. Our operational technology are the things that really enable these sectors that are providing critical lifeline services to function. We try to highlight those opportunities to students while they're early in the pipeline of developing their career path, make sure that they're aware of the opportunities to work within the energy sector and to work with the Department of Energy in particular, because those are sometimes, like Connor mentioned, it's I didn't know the Department of Energy was doing that. You know, we see that consistently, whether it's our cybersecurity, our energy security, or our emergency response missions, we see that same sort of reaction from time to time. But it really presents us with a terrific opportunity to be good stewards of government programs and to be good partners conducting outreach. As an example, just because I do like numbers, I like quantifiable things occasionally. U.S. universities in particular are currently projected to produce fewer than 30% of the required number of graduates to fill the 1.4 million computer specialist job openings alone over the next several years. Moreover, a smaller number of those students are American citizens, as the proportion of foreign students studying STEM in the United States has doubled over the course of the last 30 years. So the current estimates and with the current trends, international students are going to make up half of all STEM doctorates in the very near future. So it's important to note that while that in and of itself creates some challenges, we're not fully utilizing American talents here as well. Minorities and women are historically underrepresented in the STEM fields in particular, with only 2.2% of Latinos, 2.7% of African Americans, 3.3% of American Indians and Alaskan Natives holding a university degree in STEM fields. And women constitute 47% of the overall workforce, but in particular within these fields, are only about 28% of the science and engineering workforce. So for us, this is a national security imperative. We have all of these diverse challenges. We have a slew of mission space and opportunities to work against these areas, but not having a workforce that provides a variety of diversity and perspective in different ways of creatively solving these problems really does become an opportunity for us to create a more diverse and more inclusive workforce as an asymmetric advantage as we look to try to overcome what in some spaces, like in cybersecurity, is a competition with malicious actors. So I look forward to having that conversation today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin R. Frost. I am the Director for the Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs here at the Department of Energy. And before I go any further, I would like to say Yat Shibene and Mike Boon. Those are both of my tribes, Navajo and Southern Ute, and what I just said was hello, relatives. And it's very important for us within the tribal community to express those thoughts first before anything else, because there are certain cultural contexts and cultural protocols that we go through in the tribal communities. It doesn't matter the topic we discuss, but those things we kind of put out front. And after that, depending on the crowd I usually am speaking with, I would tend to, if I see some of my tribal elders in the audience, I would ask for their permission to speak. It doesn't matter my title. What's important is that they are older than me. They have the knowledge and wisdom that's been gleaned traditionally and indigenously from time immemorial. So by doing those things and asking for that permission to speak, it tends to lessen those types of boundaries that may exist, particularly when it comes from the federal government interacting with Native American tribes on a government-to-government relationship, and also understanding that there is a trust responsibility there. So understanding that, that's why I would begin that, but I also do that to also kind of give our audience as well a glimpse into how we interact, or at least this office interacts, with the tribal community at large. As I said earlier, I am from the Office of Indian Energy, and what our office is really charged with is reducing or stabilizing electricity, electrifying tribal lands and homes. We also look at energy savings, we look at education and outreach, we look at STEM, technical assistance. There's a lot of other things that other presenters here this morning have talked about, or earlier today, including Connor, talking about the national labs. There are a lot of things that we can do in the energy development spectrum. But as we kind of go along this energy development spectrum, we also have to understand and also work with tribes, depending on their capacity level, to begin thinking about security measures as well. Not only when it pertains to protecting their individual grids or microgrids, but also to the centralized grid at large as well. And the other part that really comes into play with our office is that one of the things that's very important to us is when we begin these types of discussions is to make sure Indian country is not left out of the discussion. Because there have been far too many instances when rules are promulgated, when programs are stood up, there is no, what we would consider meaningful consultation with tribal governments and tribal entities. And what this allows this office to do is, one, we engage with these tribal governments or energy development entities that work on behalf of tribes, but we also make sure that this office is responsive to listen to what their needs and concerns are. And the most important and vital aspect of that, it allows us to look at trends to get ahead of the curve, so to speak, with that when we do entertain and interface with these tribal communities, we kind of already have some data in place about some possible options that may exist to help them along their energy development and also with those security measures in place. So understanding that, we do have an open funding opportunity announcement right now, and that's something that I always try to get out there no matter what, because in all of walks of life, we meet so many different people from diverse backgrounds that may interact with tribal communities and pass along information with the Department of Energy. And that's why by working here with Connor and OTT, by working with Mr. Campos as well in his office, we work very well within our own agency as well, but also work very well across the federal family in order to meet some of those needs for Indian country. But back to our funding opportunity, we do have an open funding opportunity which closes at the end of September. And what that allows is tribes to put up a 50% statutory mandated non-federal cost share to look at energy production, to look at energy resiliency, to look at autonomous operation, battery storage, energy infrastructure, whether you're looking at substations, transmission lines, because there are a lot of areas within Indian country, a lot of gaps that still need to be filled when it comes to electricity. And when it comes to innovation and it comes to some of the technologies that may be talked about up here today or earlier today, one point of consideration that a lot of people should be aware of is that what may be a technological norm in mainstream America is well beyond the grasp and reach of a lot of tribal communities. So for us, when we talk about innovation, that might be as simple as a conference call. For the rest of the world, that's something that you do daily. But for a lot of our isolated rural communities, that's the only way that they have to interact with our office. We still utilize old school methods of communication, whether that's hard copy, shipping things off by mail, because that's what's required by our office in order to reach our constituency. So as we go along in today's discussion, always remember that there are a lot of communities out there, non-Indian or Indian, that still suffer from these types of technological advances, or at least are behind these technological advances and are still waiting to catch up in the rural parts of this country. But I am looking forward to today's discussion, and I hope to be able to highlight as much as I can some of the things that are going on within Indian country as well, so that the participants today and the viewers as well have a greater understanding of what's going on as we move through these different topic areas today.
Okay, so I want to jump right into the topic of national security, because there is a lot of discussion about national security. The question then is, what is the relationship between diversity, innovation, and national security, if you think there is one? So, Director, we'll start with you.
Well, there's a very strong connection, actually. So when you think about driving innovation and having the best ideas, just as some of the previous panelists mentioned, it's critical that we get that full, diverse workforce into the department and creating those innovative ideas that we can then act on, and also not just creating the technologies, but what are the applications? Mm-hmm. And I think we would all agree that how important the applications part of it is. And by having a diverse community at the table when those decisions are made, like how do we apply this technology? I think we can be a lot more successful. And really, energy security is national security. Mm-hmm. So I think as we look at increasing our diverse talent, and that will improve our innovation, we enhance our national security. So there's a direct relationship. And I also think that, you know, part of, especially as the director of the AI and Technology Office, is that as we look to the future, AI is going to be the great enabler. And I think of it as jobs for the future, for industries of the future. And as we really enable the workforce, give them the right tools and training to participate in the AI economy, which drives innovation, it's really who is going to lead in AI in the future, which countries, and then how then will we live. And so that also gets to our national security. If we have strong economic security, which is all driven through innovation, and AI is one of the fundamental drivers for that, that will then lead to a stronger national security.
Okay. And so, Connor, earlier you made actually a very great announcement relative to the entry point. So what is the entry point relative to diversity, innovation, national security in your field?
Well, there's multiple entry. I think I'm on here. There's multiple entry points, but one of the real world example that I'd like to give real quick is a program that we've got going on right now because of COVID. And the Office of Technology Transitions has launched the COVID Technical Assistance Program. And this touches everything that we've just mentioned and actually something directly that Kevin mentioned. What this program is, it opens up the access to people that need some very discrete technical assistance to our researchers in our national labs, and it funds that directly. And I put this out to the group right now. That funding is available, and it's currently sitting at our national labs waiting. People are waiting to pick up the phone and answer the phone and help with the COVID fight. And 2 of the 6 projects we've already approved have been directly to tribal communities. And this kind of hits everything. COVID being a national security issue in general, the innovation and talent and research and researchers and facilities that exist at our national labs, then going to communities that may not have known they had access or may not have had access otherwise. And so it kind of connects all of them. And to Kevin's point earlier about what is innovation, one of those 2 agreements was training on how to properly use PPE that the community was not currently or had previously been using. And so that's not the huge, that is not artificial intelligence. That's not, to a lot of people, a huge thing, but they needed funding. We needed to provide it. We had the expertise at the Department of Energy and the connection through Sandia National Lab in that case to connect to the community, to make sure that we connected those dots, to provide national security, to make sure we have a healthy community, use our innovation and our know-how, and then to make sure that people had access to it.
Okay. So, Deputy Secretary, you made an important point relative to education in particular, and the underutilization, underrepresentation of a number of demographic groups. So how do you solve for that?
Well, I think one of the first steps is, I think, engaging the organization in a way that allows culturally for us to embrace people that are going to be trailblazers in some of these fields, create an environment of trust and security that allows them to come in as trailblazers in these fields. Where in many cases they are going to be historically underrepresented, allowing them to have the opportunities to receive mentorship from leadership within the organizations to continue to enable their professional growth, and then to enable them to perform further outreach just based on, if nothing else, I think the positive experience that someone can gain working in this field, allow them to perform that outreach that will further increase the diversity and further increase the opportunities for others to come into fields where they may have been historically underrepresented, and demonstrating that they're going to have the opportunity to continue to learn and grow and develop in these spaces. Yeah, I think there was a point that Kevin made a few minutes ago about just the wide variety of diversity that we find in energy systems and availability and access to resources and technology throughout many different communities. For us, when we look at energy resiliency and energy security, it's a local community problem. Yeah, I made the analogy with Iowa and the impacts that they're dealing with right now with the derecho from a little bit more than a week ago. That's a local community problem. If we don't have people from all backgrounds and all walks of life, we're not going to be able to represent the challenges of today appropriately to solve for the problem in an appropriate way. Just yesterday, we had the opportunity to partner with the American Public Power Association specifically to try to tackle the challenge of island preparedness and response, because there's a real unique challenge.
Yeah.
But without the appropriate background and the appropriate understanding of those challenges and what those local community needs are, either directly during a response operation, or for education and training to prepare them to be more resilient to challenges. It's just not there. That's not, we can't solve that with a traditional mainland response. I think that's fairly analogous across all of the different challenges and all the different mission areas that we engage in today.
Okay. Director Frost, from where you sit, how do we solve for these issues as we're talking about diversity, innovation, national security? How do we solve for that?
Well, first, when we begin to look at that issue, we also have to look at the structure and the organization levels of all the various tribes, where they're situated across all manners of the lower 48 and Alaska as well. Because in Alaska, you have some tribes in the Arctic region that now become involved in our national security Arctic discussion now, along with all the other Arctic countries around the world. So where does that fit in for those individual tribal communities? Where does this office fit in within that entire subset? Because we have a very attenuated mission and goals and objectives. We're not charged with doing international affairs on behalf of DOE or even on some of those tribal communities. What we do is we work within the building to alert international affairs. These are some of the sensitivities you may roll across, or these are certain points of contact that if you're working up there in Alaska as an example, that these are the people within these villages that you have to get in contact with to continue these types of conversations. And the interesting part about working with individuals like that, particularly in Alaska, is that you can have one individual that's wearing or I should say several hats, so that in one meeting they'll be talking about the needs that their native village might need, but then they may also sit on one of their regional Alaska regional corporation boards, and then in another meeting they take that hat and they take off their tribal hat and put on their regional corporation hat, and then they have a whole nother set of goals because Alaska regional corporations are also charged with a different mission as well. But also too, what I said earlier is, when we look at the capacities of these different types of tribes, we also have to take into it that cultural context. There are a lot of things that we talk about in the energy spectrum. There's a lot of things we talk about with security that we will be able to find corollaries with tribes. So one way, if we're talking security, if we're talking quote unquote digitally or electronically, from that reference, we can reference with some of our tribal nations, depending on how they were structured and set up. Some had warrior groups, warrior societies that protected the community at large. So we find different ways and innovate that way to kind of get some of our thoughts and some of our ideologies across into some of these concrete ideas that they already understand. So by doing that, that not only allows us to continue those important conversations, but it also shows a deference, and that's something that's always looked for within Indian communities, a deference to their thoughts, customs, ways of life. And those are things that when you initiate these types of conversations, when you can interweave that into those types of communications and meetings, those are things that really stick with the people we meet with, and they carry those thoughts back home to their communities. And then that's what keeps that conversation going. And out of that, you might have an energy development champion, you might have an energy security champion, you might have an innovation champion, and that can run the gamut, whether it's STEM, whether that's economic development, because the one thing that we do see within Indian country, everything has an energy production nexus. So when we look at that from that framework, when we begin having those talks and we start the energy development conversations and we allow that to occur, we fund that, we interact, we offer technical assistance, then we can begin to have tribes think about bundling different projects together. Okay, you're gonna talk about you need some funding for a project from Indian Energy? Well, let's go to Connor's office and see what they're doing over there as well. Maybe there's some tribes that would like to do a demonstration project, that might want to take a risk to try something new. Or there might be something else that Caesar's offering, some type of training that we can all roll in.
So it seems to me that the discussion is not in the abstract. The discussion is about understanding the structures of the particular, in your cases, you were talking about the tribes, but in general, when you talk about diversity, innovation, et cetera, you have to understand, it seems to me, the cultural nuances. You have to understand the structures, so you're then able to solve for it, because other than that, you're simply talking about diversity, innovation, and national security in a vacuum. And it seems to me that that's what you're saying. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, because the other point I would like to make is, so we talk about COVID, we talk about the impacts to our tribal communities, and these will be felt a lot longer than the rest of the nation because they will be crippling tribal economies in the future. But to get back to my earlier point was the most important part of that is when we're able to have that diversification, there are old philosophies that still work to this day, and by being receptive to them, that allows to actually implement those on the ground level.
And I'd also add to that point that in what we do at our core mission in the Office of Technology Transitions, when we try to move technology beyond, we're passing things off. Well, to pass things off or to do a relay, you need two hands.
Yes.
And if there's not if we can expand the base that exists on the other side of the transom, expand the amount of potential handoff partners that we have, then we have a higher percentage and a higher probability that we're going to be successful in our mission to take some of this unbelievable research and make it successful.
And so what I want to do now is, because we've talked a lot about a number of things that I think are important, but I want to go back to the question I asked the earlier panel. What are we not talking about? What are we not talking about? So, Director?
Well, I think one thing is we talk about the importance of getting a diverse set of people at the table to make decisions, and we talked a lot about STEM, investing more in STEM education, and I would say maybe the next step that we should talk about is how do you, once you do have a diverse set of people in the organization, how do you ensure that they're also getting promoted? How do you ensure that they're moving up in the organization and can also have equal access to leadership and to decision making? And then so that's one thing, and I think the other is this, that investment in STEM education, we absolutely need to do that. But how do we transform the workforce we have of today? Really more along what Assistant Secretary Winberg was talking about. What about the truck drivers? What about factory workers? And how do we, understanding that, and what I believe is also an AI transformation that's happening in the future, how do we train them, and how do we, again, Chris Fall talked about a time to reset. How about taking a reset and looking at, as we train the next workforce or retrain them, how do we get a more diverse set of people into those really new career fields?
Yeah, and how do we institutionalize that and make it a practice? Because I always say that diversity is not in addition to what you do, it is what you do every day. It's so we can't tell people you're doing a good job now, go forth and be diverse. What does that even mean? So the issue becomes, how do we make that transition, and how do we make sure we don't lose that knowledge, because we have to keep doing it over and over again. And whenever there is an issue, the first thing we want to then go to is, there's a diversity problem, let's do some training. Well, that's not the issue. So looking at it more broadly, I think, is probably the way to go. Connor, your thoughts?
I have two. One is that we're not talking about how difficult this is, and I'm particularly talking about energy transitions, energy technology, hard tech innovation.
Yeah.
For groups and communities, whether it's Silicon Valley or the MIT crowd in Boston, this is difficult for those groups, right? People that are old hat at innovation ecosystems, it's difficult for that. So when we start talking about new communities coming into the fold and growing their expertise and stuff, it has to be understood. Hard tech is hard. It's not software where you can, for very little money, develop an application and then be a billionaire the next day. If we're talking about energy in particular, it's a very risk-averse group. We're rebuilding an airplane while we fly it. When we talk about energy transitions, you can't let the lights go off. You've got to make sure it's safe, reliable, and clean at some point. This is difficult, and we don't want to get people discouraged with that, because it's not a low-hanging fruit. It's just not. And one of the ways we do that, I want to talk about this MOU a little bit today, because it's very important. A lot of people out there that aren't involved in government, well, what's a MOU worth and what actually happens? It's really being put to work. This occurred about 2 weeks ago, and as we found out from Director Campos in Office of Technology Transitions, it was in the works. Office of Technology Transitions, Director Bird's team over at MBDA, and the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity are right now working on how we are going to put this to real work to make open lines of communication, utilize the nationwide infrastructure that MBDA has through their hubs, and make sure that we're increasing the amount of people that are hearing the message. So that's exciting to see that something like this actually has real effects, real impacts, and real action behind it, because that will help us make sure that we educate and inspire people to push beyond those hard limits in a very hard activity, which is hard tech energy innovation ecosystem building.
Okay, thank you. Assistant Secretary, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think over the long term, I think you're right. It's about institutionalizing it. And I think from my perspective, when you get down to what is it we're really trying to do, we're trying to solve hard, complex problems. And that requires developing an organization that at its core is okay with having all of its assumptions challenged, period. We need many different perspectives. We need many diverse backgrounds to look at problems in different ways. And we need to continuously make sure that people are okay with having their perspective challenged.
Yeah.
That's what it's really about.
Right.
I think when you look at some of these grand national security challenges that we have today, it's not one that can be solved by insular groupthink. And that is challenged by introducing diversity into the mix and allowing us to innovate through consideration of many different points of view and many different perspectives, many different ways of solving some of these grand challenges that we have. Whether it's energy security, whether it's emerging tech, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it is development of resilience for traditionally underserved communities, whatever that might be, it's about challenging those assumptions to generate better outcomes for all.
Thank you. And so we're just about out of time, so Director Frost, I'm going to ask you to take us home on this.
Absolutely. When it comes to institutionalizing, we have the one side, which would be the federal government, the agencies that interact with a lot of our tribes. They're pretty much institutionalized in the processes, the administration of their daily activities, and how they interact with these particular communities. On the tribal side, the one thing that we do observe and see again is you have to be realistic. Where are they actually sitting in terms of any of their sophistication, any of their capacity, and go from there. And once you get past that point of seeing the audience that you're dealing with and the message and how you're going to get that message across, you also have to begin to think about what can you do to make sure that this sticks within their own organization. And that's the part that becomes rather difficult at times because of the turnover in some areas and the ruralness, the location of where some of these places are. You can't get people out there at all.
Yeah.
So there will always be a constant need to fill that. But the big takeaway is, especially for the tribal community, one, be respectful. Number two, be honest. And that thing, those really move mountains. If you're honest from the very beginning about what you're looking for, what you can and can't do, tribes respect that. Tribes are willing to work with you. Because there's a long history, even in my office, that we have to overcome that is an obstacle. The entire history of this country and their interaction with tribes.
Yes.
So we have to take different approaches. That's why when I began my introduction like that, it's there to show someone. And even in my own personal life, I grew up like my constituency. No running water, no electricity, animal husbandry, subsistence living. All these things matter. And the biggest takeaway of all that I can say for our office, representation matters. If you're dealing with a community that's outside the majority, you should have individuals from your office that are from that community, because that's what opens the doors. That's what gives you that area to operate, to have real honest discussions. And even on my end here at DOE, I always talk with any of my contemporaries and my colleagues. You have a question to ask? I'll be more than happy to answer it. I can't speak for all of Indian country because we're not monolithic.
Right.
But what I can give you is my own experience. And as far as I'm concerned, one, there are no dumb questions. But two, it shows some openness on your part because you want to learn more. So it's up to me then to speak as an ambassador on behalf of Indian country and at least give you some visibility into some of the issues that we face while still allowing you to have that opportunity to ask some questions that you may not ordinarily ask of anyone.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen.
Dr. Metzler, can I, because it would be a big disservice to this audience
Sure.
not to highlight something. Right now, the Office of as Kevin said, every time there's one of these FOAs, funding opportunity announcements on the street, you want to make sure everybody knows about it so the money can get out there to the places that it's needed. Right now, the Office of Technology Transitions has our EPIC prize out on the street and a following FOA, and this is to enhance regional innovation energy innovation ecosystems across the country, and one of the big areas of the prize is to make sure that underrepresented communities are involved. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that that exists. Find it on OTT.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. And now Director Campos is going to come back and join us. I'll get out of your way here. Sure.
It's okay.
I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the panelists up here. I've always had a good relationship with the offices, the various offices in the Department of Energy, and as you can see by the panelists, the wealth of information and their dedication to their offices. It's to be commended, and I do really appreciate the comments made up here and the cooperation that we have. And goodbye to Director Byrd. Thank you, Director Byrd, for everything you've done, and I'll see you soon. And to the panelists prior to the last group, can't say enough about the Honorable Dr. Falls and the Honorable Steve Winberg and what they do in their areas. But and then to the last panel on what they presented and what they show and the cooperation that we have. And I want to say this, and I think it's really important. You saw a example or a small example of all the offices that we have here at the Department of Energy. But why it's important to hear from them is the Equity and Energy Initiative truly cannot work without all of the offices working together with us. This is a holistic approach. Yes, Equity and Energy is housed within my office, but it's a DOE initiative wide, and it incorporates and includes all of the various offices at the Department of Energy and our national labs and our other assets. So it is a holistic endeavor that has all of us involved in this great initiative. I'd like to thank everyone involved, but two separate groups in particular right now. We have within this initiative, within Equity and Energy, we developed two separate groups, one internal, and that are the champions. So the individuals that you heard today are also our champions, and we have more champions included within this initiative. The champions' purpose is to make sure that they have a voice, they have a connectivity, and obviously they help govern equity and energy throughout the department. And then I'd like to also thank the ambassadors. Now, as mentioned earlier from Secretary Burett and from my comments, we have ambassadors, and these ambassadors are phenomenal individuals that represent the private sector, either through associations, through universities and colleges, through businesses. These are the individuals that are meant to provide us with information on what is happening within the private sector as it concerns energy. And we have 20 of those ambassadors at the moment, and then we have a host of champions. So together, the champions and the ambassadors will help guide us in real time on what the current needs are in the minority communities. That's really, really, truly vital on how we succeed and how we present and how we move forward. And including in this is associations like AABE. You know, AABE has always been a friend of our offices and our department, and I can't say enough for your leader, Paula Glover, and what she's meant to my office and to me personally. She was one of the first individuals that I came across and I met when I first was confirmed by the Senate. In fact, the very, very first week I was I was brought onto the office and sat at my desk, I had an individual come out to me and say, "We have an event that's happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's the AABE conference. Can you go?" And I've just literally been there for 2 or 3 days, and I said, "Absolutely. This is an important association." I went out there, and the first time I met Paula Glover, and I can't tell you the warmth that she gave me and the knowledge that she shared with me about her association, her stakeholders, and what it meant to be associated and to work closely with my office. So I have tremendous respect for Paula Glover and what she does within AABE and within the minority communities at large. And I truly do look forward to a further cooperation with AABE and Paula and all the board members. I'd like to also just provide a great thank you to our secretary for his great leadership, Dan Briette. He has done a tremendous job since taking over not too long ago and allowing my office to explore and to develop equity and energy under his direction and leadership. So I can't say enough about our secretary and also our newly appointed and confirmed Deputy Secretary, Mark Menzies, for his leadership and his direction. Both of them and the rest of the secretaries have done a tremendous job for our office, and their leadership is truly, truly appreciated. So I can't say enough. Now, what I do want to do, and I had kind of informed Miss Glover on this. I want to bring up Ann Augustin, my deputy director, and because, as I mentioned, on how unique and how special it is a relationship with Paula Glover and all she's done to help, and I have to say this, you know, when I first started Equity and Energy and came up with the various products and the services and the initiative, you know, when we first started drafting this, when I was given direction to do so, Paula Glover was instrumental in helping me understand what was needed in the private sector and within association. So I owe a debt of gratitude for her dedication, her friendship, and mentorship at times, and leadership. So with that, I have Ann Augustin, who's going to read something pretty special going to Miss Glover.
I'll turn it. I'll show you first of all. It's a great plaque, a wooden plaque, which we wish Paula were here to receive in person. But we do thank her for the flexibility in allowing us to do this virtually here at the Department of Energy. So I'll read the Appreciation Award, which we'll make sure we mail to you, Paula. It's the United States Department of Energy Appreciation Award presented to Paula Glover, President and CEO, American Association of Blacks in Energy. In recognition of your outstanding contribution to the United States Department of Energy's Equity in Energy Initiative, including your participation on several DOE roundtable discussions, your support and guidance to the Director, Office of Economic Impact and Diversity on issues relating to engaging minority entrepreneurs in the energy sector, and your thought leadership on diversity and inclusion issues that underpin the statutory mandate of the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity. With sincere appreciation and gratitude, James E. Campos, Director, Office of Economic Impact and Diversity. And so, Paula, we really do send our heartfelt thanks to you because you have done so much for the organization. As I said, we wish you were here in person to be able to receive this, but no, we send our warmest wishes to you and thanks.
Thank you, Paula. This is well-deserved, the recognition. But this is the awareness I wanted to express to your viewers on what you mean and how much you've done for me in the office and the department. So thank you, Paula. So as we're wrapping up and closing, I'd like to make sure that that we're aware of how important equity in energy is and what we're trying to do here. Again, what we're trying to do is to promote, to make aware, and to provide access to those minority communities that need it, and also that we need it as well. We need to have minority communities participate within energy across the spectrum. Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Island Pacificers. We need to have all of our minority communities participate. women as well, veterans. This is an important and very important initiative because it is to help maintain our energy stability, viability for generations to come, and to tap into that diversity, talent that we so often need and will require in the coming years and decades. I can't tell you enough that this initiative with the leadership for our secretary will really allow us to grow and provide the platform for generations to come. I'm really, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very bullish on energy. I'm very bullish on our country, and I'm very bullish on our future. And we can ensure a future that's brighter for all of us if we ensure a stable, reliant, resilient energy economy. So this is just one step, equity in energy, but under the leadership of our secretary and the many people that have helped equity energy develop, such as individuals like Vincent Corals and Anna Gustin in my office, ambassadors, champions alike. We're all in this together. We're going to do a great job for our country and for the department, and we not only are going to do it because it's something that we're tasked to do, it's also a necessity for our country. It's a national security issue, and we're going to do a great job at doing this. So I can't thank you enough, and I cannot thank AABE enough for allowing me to have this opportunity along with the Department of Energy. I thank you so much. It's an honor.
Thank you, Director Campos. First of all, thank you for that award. I am humbled by it, and I really do appreciate the recognition, but I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that none of what I do is remotely possible without the support that I get from the members and the board of this association. And so for all of you, please know that while it may be my name on that plaque, this is an award for all of us. Also, Director Campos, we appreciate your leadership and the fact that you have decided to design an initiative that really does have all of us in mind. We as an association at AABE understand that greater representation in this industry of African Americans and other communities is really the only way that we are going to meet the challenges that we are confronted by, and as well as ensuring that all of our communities are growing and empowered economically by an industry that is at the base of our economic system. We as AABE are excited to be able to support your efforts in the Equity and Energy Initiative. We are looking forward to the collaboration with not just your office, but all of the offices within the department. And finally, I'll just say, look, these are some really interesting times that we are living in. And AABE, we stand ready to lead, to be of support, and to ensure that African Americans, our professionals, and our business owners are full participants in our business. And we stand ready to ensure that our communities are better for it.